everyone, it is Kate from Moonflower Moments. Welcome back. I thought I would do a little bit of a practice update as well as kind of give you a sense of what the rest of the year is going to look like for me in terms of studies, and particular deck studies, and then also just some other ideas that I've kind of been playing with. So to kind of catch you up to the present day, it is the beginning of September, and I've been feeling kind of quite a lot of heaviness. So I will definitely say that July and August was a chock full kind of section of my life, full of just tower moment after tower moment. And I think I'm still kind of learning to live in the aftermath of that. But one of the things that I really kind of discovered while going through this is that I was kind of intellectualizing my healing quite a bit. And so I really took a lot of time in July and August to kind of take a step back. And first off, kind of like I kept poking at things that were still very hurtful. I kept reading for things, and I think that's kind of the natural inclination of us as tarot readers, is that we really kind of want, when we're feeling nervous, to kind of like read on future outcomes and see how things are going to turn out, because we're trying to kind of self-soothe. But sometimes, because the future is kind of so shifty and so kind of up in the air and involves so many different people, oftentimes, like when I would read for future outcomes, one day I would get one outcome and then I would anxiously pull the very next day and get another outcome, and it just ended up becoming a situation to where I felt like tarot was kind of reinforcing for me, or at least the way I was using tarot was reinforcing to me and for me some kind of negative thought patterns. So I took a little bit of a step back from my practice. I did pull from my daily envelopes, which is something that I keep in my desk, and I pull at the beginning of the month. So I still was technically reading cards every day, but I really kind of took a break from that heavy work. And I think I'm kind of sharing that with you on here to kind of normalize, because part of so much of what we do with tarot reading is very introspective and very like psychoanalytical. And I think it's really important for us to say sometimes that like we can engage with the cards in a more lighthearted capacity, or we can and still respect them and still respect the work we're doing. And then also we can engage with play a little bit more too in our lives as a form of self-soothing and self-healing. So one of the things that I was already doing before those tower moments kind of hit pretty drastically is I was actually reading quite a bit of my favorite childhood books. So I'm going to share that with you, and I'm going to connect it a little bit to Alter Spaces. So one of the books that I read in August in particular was the Goosebumps book. So this is by R.L. Stine, super famous. I think this is the only Goosebumps book I've ever read by him, but this was the book that actually taught me and got me hooked on to reading. And then after this, I told my brother, I told him to read this. He never did, but that's okay. He gave me a recommendation to read Harry Potter, and it was kind of over for there. So I've really kind of done a lot of like cultivating in my library of books that I read as a child. I'm very excited to read Matilda Bone. I'm going to read this month. I think it'll be a lot of fun. I think that this is a book that is specifically about a bone setter in medieval times, and she's learning how to be a bone setter apprentice. And I just remember finding it very fascinating. I've always been very interested in literature that transported me to another place. So that was a lot of fun, and I'm going to continue on that work. But part of the work that I did that ended up being a little inner childhoody that I didn't even realize is I just built all of these shelves that are next to me. So I think you can kind of see there in the background, there's like a right there. It's hard to kind of do that backwards. There's a little gnome house, and I have all kinds of trinkets that are on these shelves. So I have all of a sudden, because I built this whole wall, it extends like from top to floor, and this is my office. 27 shelves essentially means like 27 different altar spaces. So I ended up having a lot of fun kind of rearranging this, but in the process of rearranging things, I really found quite a bit of healing, because like I had said before, a lot of the work that I have done, I think I have over intellectualized, and so it was nice from kind of a play aspect and kind of an experiential kind of aspect to kind of sit down and kind of group things together in a way that was like meaningful to me. And it got me kind of really thinking about altar spaces and the way that I build them, because a lot of my altar spaces are never to a particular deity. I call a lot of spaces altar spaces. There was a quote that I read one time on social media, and it basically said that the top of your mom's like dresser, where she keeps like her keys and like her perfume and her favorite lipstick, is an altar space too. And that very much is how I live my life. I think about space in a very intentional way, but I also try to find that intentionality and that beauty within like the mundaneness. And so it was a lot of fun to, for example, like I have this little chair right here, and I have a little owl. So I have a little owl sitting in his little chair, and then right next to him is like a little ghosty, and then, you know, in front of that is a tarot card. And like I could imagine, for example, that the two individuals were like talking about the card and just kind of had like a little bit of like fun imaginative play. So I think one of the things that I will be doing is definitely incorporating more toys within my altar spaces. I know that that's something that Krista Chronicles has spoken in length about here. I also saw Candy talk about it a lot with her Barbies. I really kind of want to get my handful on some dolls and things like that, but in the meantime, it's been a lot of fun to set up this space because I think it gave me the opportunity to take my emotions that were existing and kind of like heavily weighing on my body and kind of put them somewhere else and do something meaningful with them in a way that didn't feel like I was poking and prodding and like pouring salt down my wound, but a way that felt very productive. So I will say I think that's been kind of an important part of my journey this past couple months. So even though I really took a significant step back, one of the decks that I did find to be helpful in the beginning of my journey was going to be one that I have to show here, and it is the Iris Oracle. I don't see this talked about enough on TarotTube, but I did want to share it with you because I think that if you're in the beginning of kind of doing some inner child work, this is a very powerful deck. It is very confrontational. So for example, this is Everything You Need But Too Soon. This hit me very hard. I had a whole experience with that card. Here we have Dream Travel. Then we have here, is that say No Bull? Yeah, it says No Bull. I don't know what this one says. Fear that the light will bring judgment. It's really terrifying. But then you also have words like service. And so I feel like it is a really balanced deck in the sense of it has some metaphorical phrases. It also has very strong keywords like smother. But there's something about this artwork as well as the concepts that pulls through that is such a wide range. It is a huge deck. It has 78 cards. That really kind of did allow me to kind of get a sense on the fact that I did suffer from a tower, like a really fucking bad tower. So I needed some space to kind of conceptualize that. And then when I was able to articulate my thoughts and realize that maybe reading about it wasn't what I needed, that's kind of when I turned to the altar spaces as play. And actually most of them, I have like whole altars at this point set up to my favorite toys and my favorite books and various things. So I'll put some images on the screen of that space now. Another deck that I've got that has gotten a lot of use has been my Supernova Tarot. Wrong name, Sawyer's Path Tarot. I got them around the same time, so my mind is like mixing because they both start with S. But this is the Sawyer's Path Tarot. Now this is out of print. The Iris Oracle is in print, but I do apologize. I'm going to show a lot of out of print decks today. So this one is something that I really, really treasure because I think that when I did want to do readings, I wanted something that had nice, clean, bright, vibrant artwork. I really am someone who loves bright colors, and so I found this to be quite joyful to engage with because I could still do a little bit of a reading, such as not related to the tower, but more of like mundane, of like what is something that can bring me joy today. And cards like this that are very like close up in front with these bright, vibrant colors did give me kind of clear, nice, concise answers. And I think traditionally I have always like held a spot for my more like non-traditional readers, such as my William Blake, even to a certain extent my Radiant Wilds, Terra Botanical, which is a pit deck. But I think that there really is a place for decks that are just like so RWS based and follow that symbolism in times of deep distress. There's something about that consistency that I think that we can really find comfort in. So Sawyer's Path was one of the favorite decks that I used. So bringing it back to current day, I do want to talk to you about the daily challenge that I'm doing this month. So traditionally, I stuff all of my daily envelope all of my daily cards, all my daily card pulls. I pull them at the beginning of the month and I stuff them into envelopes. And I still am doing that, but instead of my question being something along the lines of like, what actionable step can I take today? Or like, what is one thing I can do to really kind of brighten my day? I have decided that I am going to do the Lion Hearts Challenge. So I'm currently doing it with the lovely Imogen over at Sapling Tarot, as well as a friend of mine who got me into tarot in the first place. She's not on YouTube, but she's someone I engage with in person. And so every morning I have been pulling my cards and messaging Imogen, messaging the other person, and we've just kind of been holding each other accountable. I think that the Lion Hearts Challenge this month is where the wild things are. So I really wanted to embrace sort of that wildness and that feralness. So I'll leave a link down to the Instagram challenge below in case you want to join in, because I think the prompts are really good and quite juicy. And it's been so much fun doing it with a partner, because typically when I see pre-made prompts, I have the tendency to kind of alter them. But because I'm doing it with other people, I'm like, no, I'm not going to alter it. Whatever concept is being explored in this challenge, I'm going to read exactly how it is intended, and I'm going to work with that. So that's what I've been doing. So to kind of embrace this feralness, which I think is very in tune with like some of the play work that I've been doing, I have decided to work with two different decks in particular. The first deck that I stuffed into my envelopes for my daily challenges is going to be my Forhaxa Tarot. So this is the first time that I've really gotten to work with this deck in a very deep and intentional capacity. I knew when I got this deck in that it was going to be one that was incredibly important to me, but I think I was in a spot of a lot of kind of Night of Fire, more kind of like immature kind of fire when I first got it, and then I very kind of quickly ended up in a place of rage with the Tower moment. And so I feel like I had to double check to make sure the cards went backwards the whole time. I feel like I'm now kind of in a spot to where I can kind of cultivate what feels more like the Queen of Fire and the King of Fire that comes through with this. This is feralness and this is wildness, but in the same kind of breath, it also has a sense of intention behind it, which I really appreciate, because I want to be able to tap into that feralness, but I know from personal experience that if you let me go into the Night of Fire, I will not only burn myself up, but I burn like everything around me. I just get so addicted to the excitement, the enthusiasm, the heavy feeling, the emotions, the back and forth, things like that. It's just very much how I am. So it's nice to have something that is a representation of that element that to me still touches on the essence of it, but it's a little bit more mature. So I have been pairing this with, and this is my favorite pairing of the year so far. It is September, but I'm saying this is my favorite pairing of the year so far. I've been pairing it with the Bloodlands Oracle, which is a bit of an interesting choice because the Forhaxa is color and the Borderlands is essentially all of these different landscapes. It is an archetype deck, I would say, for certain. That's how I've been using it. The guidebook is not as impressive as, say, for example, the Wild Unknown or even the Citadel Oracle. I definitely think the guidebook, it kind of tells you what this place is and gives you like a brief description, but I wouldn't say the descriptions are like particularly powerful. But that's okay, as long as I know what these places are. So the Gateway, I know what it is. Eruption, I know what it is. But the Cloud Veil, I can kind of assume based off of this image, but they have some really interesting landscapes and ideas that I've never really seen anywhere before. But as long as the guidebook tells me kind of what a cloud veil is, then I'm able to kind of play on that metaphor. So I've been having a lot of fun kind of imagining this is the cavern. Let me go ahead and pull a card. So I say Two of Earth. So how would this particular fae within the Tomb of Earth interact if she were in the cavern? And so it's been a lot of fun for me to kind of imagine these fae. Here is the burn, and then here we have like the Three of Earth. Actually, that's a really beautiful reading about rebuilding. And so it's the concept of kind of exploring these different actions that can be taken within these different areas. And I find that that's like allows me to see things from a bigger perspective. It also gives me an opportunity to where if we have the caldera, this was a new word for me, and I also have like the Seven of Water, I could imagine that this woman is actually kind of scooping up different types of water. Like, so maybe she's like scooping up something from the particular lake, maybe she's scooping up some snow, maybe she's scooping up I don't know, some kind of dew, right? Because the Seven of Water kind of gives me this concept of like her gathering a lot of different types of water. And so I can imagine her quite literally what she would be doing in this area. And then I can ask myself, well, how would I be engaging within this water? I could even like look at the imagery, because I just set the card down so I can see it a little bit better, and see that she is sitting on that kind of like in the water, it looks like to me. So would I be in the water, or would I be on the top? And from a kind of metaphoric level, I find that really fun to engage with and say, this is how she would be, how would I be, why is that? So I have a lot of good things to say about this deck. Like I said, the guidebook is really not, I can show you an entry because I know it doesn't give it a lot of attention. So let me go ahead and pull one. I don't know if my camera is good enough for y'all to read it. I'm hoping that my camera is good enough for y'all to read it. So if you would like to pause it, you're more than welcome to. But essentially, it says the solitary peak. The card reveals the power of a lone mountain peak standing tall, ruling over its domain as a symbol of independent spirit. We all strive to be strong and self-sufficient, and we all have it within us to be a solitary peak in many aspects of our lives. Now is a good time to honor your efforts, celebrate your achievements, and bask in your own mastery. I mean, I think that's all fine. The keywords are independence, self-confidence, and grandiosity, but I have other decks that kind of explore it, so I think that the write-up's a little bit generic. But once again, I think it is hella cool to have an oracle deck that is landscape based. So I'm going to continue to work with this, and I probably will do a video. I've been thinking about it a little bit, about how I use my landscape decks. So definitely have that in mind on the horizon. I want to show you, because I have a lot, I want to show you how I use my landscape decks in practice and what that ends up like looking like for me, because it is kind of like a gluttonous part of my collection. I have a lot of landscape decks, but I kind of use them all for different purposes. So that's kind of the first thing that's taking my attention, is like that daily challenge. The prompts from Lionhearts are pretty intense, but I'm having a good time kind of coming back to it. So now that I know that I can kind of feel like I am more in the recovery zone of the tower, because I kind of do feel my mind like starting to get a little bit antsy. So another thing that I am doing, we are definitely leaning into the vampires part of September. Let me go ahead and grab a deck because I see it over here. So I am absolutely leaning into the vampires. I have been reading Crowns of Nyaxia. I would show you, but my Kindle is dead, and I just remembered that. So anyway, I need to charge that. I always forget to charge my Kindle, probably because I always go to bed like reading it. So like I wake up sometimes and it's in my hand. But I've been reading Crowns of Nyaxia. I'm on the second book in the series, so it is a vampire series. Really enjoying that. I think that's kind of an extension of like my inner child work. I was a huge Twilight fan, and I started reading that in middle school. So that's kind of been like warm and cushy for me, and it's been fun to see how I can enjoy that kind of genre, especially in this kind of seasonally appropriate time, in a way that is new and engaging and a little bit, I guess, like age appropriate. Not that that's actually a terrible word. I'm trying to like not say that. I don't really know like if there is a such thing as age appropriate in most cases, because I feel like it's a term that like people use to kind of self-censor themselves. So whatever, anyway, I'm not going to edit that out. So another thing that I have on the books is I intend to read Carmilla. So this is a gay love story. It is actually the book that inspired Dracula. So I'm going to go ahead and read this to you. Isolated in a remote mansion in Central European forest, Laura longs for companionship until a carriage accident brings another young woman in her life, the seductive and secret, sometimes erratic Carmilla. As Carmilla's actions become more puzzling and volatile, Laura develops bizarre symptoms and her health goes into decline. Laura and her father discover something monstrous. So I think this will be quite fun. Like I already said, it is the book that inspired Dracula. I've tried to pick up Dracula a couple times. I have no problem reading classic lit. I actually quite enjoy it. But I think I'm going to start here first because this is way fewer pages than Dracula. Like this is 138. So I got that. So with that being said, of course, I mean, if we're bringing out the vampires, y'all know exactly what time it is. So it is quite seasonally appropriate to bring out TOV. So I'm absolutely excited and thrilled to engage in this again. I do find this deck to be a more difficult reader, hence why I studied it. But I think I'm just going to fucking just read it. Like, I get into my head about it because it is so beautiful and so esoteric, and I did do a full study with it. So I know that the layers are meant in there, but I find the imagery to kind of be something that's more difficult for me to work with. So for example, if we have the skull here, I see the skull, I can see that it's titled Daughter of Skulls, which I believe is the Page of Pentacles, but the guidebook will like focus in on that skull, and it'll be something along the lines of how like the skull has a lot of symbolism and a lot of meaning, and I think that's okay, but like sometimes the guidebook kind of has to tell me that the meaning is there. Like, I have a harder time discerning it for myself. So with that being said, I think I'm just going to pick this up and not get in my head about it and like just read the cards. Like, what do I see? Worry a little bit less about the associations and what I know about the deck, and more just kind of let it free flow. So I'm going to do that by doing a lot quicker of readings. One of my favorite things to do with an activity with a book is I will kind of read on the character's motivations. So if I pull, for example, that Carmilla is motivated by the Prince of Knives, which is so perfect because he has like blood all over his teeth, and this would be the Knight of Swords, then even if I'm not picking up on those themes in the book, I can like start reading for it. So then it kind of becomes like this fun, like close read analysis, because sometimes I'm reading for themes that are not there, but sometimes it helps me to engage in a deeper analysis of the author's thoughts and the narrator's thoughts and the character's thoughts, because like it points out something to me that I might have missed. So I am going to do that. It's going to be my little happy pairing. So that was another deck that I'm thinking about. Now the next thing that I'm super excited about, y'all know I am a big ol' fan of William Blake, so I'm going to go ahead and show you my most used edition. And my most used edition, my most loved edition, we are over 3 years into this relationship at this point, is going to be my second edition of William Blake. So you can see that it's a little bigger, it has these gold edges, and then it has this bright, beautifully manipulated colors. So I really appreciate this deck so much. You've heard me wax poetic about it so many fucking times, so I won't do that again. If you want to hear me confess my love to this deck, like just go watch my top 10 video. Like I went on for several minutes about this. So because I love this deck so much, but the guidebook doesn't explain what the fuck is going on with cards like this. I did find out, because like what the fuck is going on with cards like this? I did find out that there were a couple other editions of William Blake that were printed before this one. So that kind of sent me on a rabbit hole. So first off, I got these huge cards. I'm very notorious for not reading size dimensions when I buy things. So I don't think it was listed on Mercari anyway, which is where I bought these, but I don't even think I would have realized if it was listed how big these cards were. These cards are literally huge. So this is what we call the Tarot Triumphs. So this was the first kind of conceptualization by Ed Burren in regards to the William Blake Tarot. And so these are all of the majors. The fun part about this is some of the cards that he has in here for the majors actually ended up being the majors in the second edition and also the first full edition, which I'm about to show you. But some of them actually have changed. So this like death card is the same. This is the same. The Hanged Man energy is the same. I'm gonna get to ones that's a little bit different. And if you bear with me, I'll do a little bit of comparison and contrast. So assessment is different. So, let me go ahead and look. You're gonna see how fast I can find this. And I'm not even gonna lie, I hate editing. So I probably won't edit this out. So I guess we'll just see how fast I can go. But per usual, it probably will be one of the last cards. Oh my gosh. How embarrassing would it be if I went through all of these and then had skipped it? Okay guys, where is it? I found it. Turns out all of my majors were all the way in the back. This was Ed Burns, I got it, original conceptualization of justice. And actually, I quite like it because you can see here, this woman is kind of saying like, oh, this has nothing to do with me. There's another woman who's crying. There's a woman that's balancing, it looks like a pendulum, which is really beautiful. And there's another woman who's kind of waiting at the feet of justice. And this is what it ended up being in the actual deck, which maybe there's a reason for it. I haven't read the guidebook in depth, but I don't know, I just feel like this artwork is much cooler. So there are a few instances in which it's really, really fun to see the changes that were made. I haven't read all the way through this first guidebook, this chunker of a guidebook yet to determine why those changes were made, but I think that that will be part of what I do within this time period, is do a lot of studying with that. So to clarify for purposes, this is the Tarot Triumphs. This is, there were only, I think, 300 copies of this made. So this was a pretty good out-of-print find for the month. This is the second edition, which has the bright colors. And then I'll go ahead and grab the first edition. Sorry if you can hear my dog. He is super old, so I don't take away his squeak toys when I'm filming, because he's like 15 years old, so let him have it. And then this is the first edition. And you can see how muted these color tones are in comparison to, say for example, something that is like bright and wild like that, or even kind of bright and wild like that. So these colors are way more muted in this deck, which is the first edition, than the second edition. The colors definitely got a lot of work. So that's been interesting to see as well. The second edition doesn't come with a guidebook. First edition comes with this chonker. So even though it is technically out of print because it's an older edition, I felt like it was worth the study to purchase. So, and it helped me figure out what the fuck was going on with that card. So in case you were wondering, I'm probably not going to be able to find it, but that card where it looks like one of the characters is essentially engaging in, I don't know what I can say on YouTube, but engaging in the thing, I literally wouldn't have a problem saying this in person. I just don't know what I can say on YouTube. Anyway, he is kneeling at the foot of another man and engaging in what looks like to be consensual intercourse. In this guidebook, crazy enough, Ed Burham actually says that that is William Blake himself kneeling at the foot of a particular god or deity or something like that. I did read it. I don't remember all that it said, so I'll have a walkthrough of all three editions at some point. So I'll let you know my thoughts once I actually finish it. But I thought that was cool. I was like, fuck yeah, William Blake, like it made the card kind of connect for me, and then I was able to be like, okay, cool, because like I have zero fucking problem with any kind of imagery that is portrayed in a deck, but when I don't understand imagery that is completely and absolutely radical, and that it's not explained to me in the tiny little itty bitty guidebook. Here's the itty bitty guidebook. Like, you just get this much per card. Like, where'd that card come from? Like, why? I know Burren actually had a lot of ideas when he was making this. I know he's a William Blake scholar, so like, I know the choices were intentional, but like, where the fuck did it come from? So it's been nice to know where the fuck the choices came from. So I sounded like super prudish when I was going through there, and then I just cursed a lot, but either way. So that is kind of like the main things that I'm studying. But another thing that I'm studying, and I'm sorry to show so many out of print decks, y'all don't kill me. It's kind of the season of OOP babes. Here's the deck in the most gorgeous, beautiful bag possible. This is my unicorn deck, my white whale deck, the one deck that I have wanted the longest. This is my Delta Enduring. Here are the backs in case you want to see. I did end up doing a full walkthrough of this deck when I first received it because being that I am from Louisiana, I wanted to kind of share my first thoughts about the deck because I can understand most of it and read most of it right out of the bag. And I just absolutely love this. So what I love so much about this deck is its unflinching reality towards truth and the way that it really, really, really does not mince words. So for example, there are some really heavy hitter cards in here. I don't know if we're gonna see it, but the Devil card is actually the police. The police are portrayed in a lower income neighborhood, which is something that's like really validating to see. So for example, I went ahead and I pulled this 8 of Swords the other day, and essentially what Egan, who is the deck creator, had to say about this is they essentially said that growing up in Louisiana, like they did not want to kind of put blindfolds over like the problems that it faces. So Louisiana is the prison capital of the world. We have more people incarcerated in Louisiana than anywhere in the world. And like growing up in Louisiana, that is something that is very apparent, especially as working within those communities as like a teacher. It's very obvious. And so what Eden decided to do for the 8 of Swords, she decided to display a person who was imprisoned, who was looking out of the bars of their window and looking at the moths. And she said that a lot of times in the 8 of Swords, people will say things like, well, you just need to strip off your blindfold. You just need to grab your sword and you need to make the most of it. And it was something that was incredibly frustrating for her because in her experience, sometimes like the things that are holding us back are so deeply systemic that like some people literally cannot do that. And so she wanted to portray that in this kind of light, where this person is imprisoned and essentially they're not able to change their circumstances, but they are able to look around in those circumstances and try to find the tiniest little glimmers of hope. And I really liked it because it felt like it wasn't light washed. So I kept this out. It's really reassuring to know that this deck was created by someone who is so absolutely aware of what's happening here, and there's like a whole language that's kind of built in, like this crawfish boil. But at the same time, like we can have the crawfish boil, but we can also have like the truth that there is radical imprisonment here, and there are radical differences between how people are experiencing life here, how people are treated here. There's still so many systemic issues, and so it's good to see all of that reflected back in a deck. So this is going to be one of my primary studies for the rest of the year too, and I know that. I'm trying not to overwhelm myself with too many studies because I know myself, I suffer from a little bit of like demand avoidance for sure. I'm also super busy, but I really searched for this deck for a very long time, and I was very thankful to get it for a reasonable price because I've seen this to go for astronomical amounts. The guidebook is 1000% worth reading, and I want to read every one of Egan's words. I really kind of want to feel what Egan felt when creating this deck. And that's the 5 of Wands. So I think that is all I have to share with you, unless I'm missing something drastic. My deck usage has kind of gone to warrior. I used to pick a lot of decks every week. I would rotate my decks every single week, and I would try to use all the decks. My deck usage has gotten really into specialty areas, to where I'm really finding myself kind of specializing in particular pairs and taking a lot more time to get to know them. But I think that that's a natural progression of not only my buying habits, but my practice as well, and kind of cozying in for what is, I consider to be one of the best seasons in the world, which is Virgo season, and definitely the season for like analysis and study and things like that. So I've been settling into the fall. So I think that is it. I just wanted to come on here and give you a bit of an update. I do have a lot of really good content scheduled. I'm excited. I have a video where I talk with Imogen over at Sapling Tarot, who's just such a great collaboration buddy, and we talked essentially about the way that the numbers in the major arcana, those cards, are associated with like ages and stages of development in humans. So for example, like the number 17 is essentially the star card. I don't know why I had such a hard time saying that. And what you are experiencing at the age of 17 in many cases is reflective in the star card's themes. So essentially, like when you're 13, you are experiencing a lot of like death card themes. So that's a lot of fun. I also have a video coming up where I go through all of the different court cards as like stages of writing. I've really been wanting to film a little bit more content in relation to court cards because I find people to be so interesting, and so therefore I love talking about and like thinking about the court cards. So I have a lot of that stuff planned. But I think this was kind of like my little kind of chatty, this is kind of what's going on. And I just want to go ahead and reiterate, thank y'all so much for being here. I really love being in this space with y'all. I might be a little slower in terms of like producing content, but I think it's because I'm kind of naturally slipping into this space where I want to do like a little bit more deep diving and a little bit more like deep analysis. So kind of like, I guess that's kind of what I'm experiencing. So I will see y'all all again next time. Thank y'all so much for being here, and see you later.